If your son or daughter is playing cricket and struggling to keep up with the more developed players, then this video is for you. I'm going to give you clear recommendations on how your child can become stronger, faster and safer on the field. My name is Sam, and for the last 5 years I've been coaching hundreds of cricketers from all around the world, giving them S&C programs that they can do from the gym or at home, and many of them have been children. And about 15 to 20 years ago, more towards the 20 years now, I was one of those children in the same position that your child is in right now. I was very much a late bloomer who struggled to hit the ball off the square, so I turned to fitness in order to help me catch up to those players that were a lot taller and stronger than I was at 13 or 14 years old. And now I'm helping not only the little guy, but also the bigger guys and girls who have shot up and are trying to play cricket with a body that they're just not used to being inside of. So the key topics we're going to talk about in this video are peak height velocity, whether lifting weights stunts growth, whether children should play in more than one sport or multi-sports, and much more. And if you find this video helpful, then I've dropped a link in the description below where you can get more free recommendations on what you should do S&C wise for your child. First up, let's talk about PHV or peak height velocity. Very simply, PHV is that period of growth during puberty when your child goes from shooting up quite a few inches in a very short space of time. But we can break PHV down into 3 different phases. Pre-PHV is childhood to early adolescence, and a common mistake I see from parents during this phase is thinking that S&C isn't required. Sure, we don't need to be in a gym lifting really heavy, but we can be focusing on fundamental movement patterns, balance, control, stability, and also just enjoying exercise. What the research shows is that if a child is exposed to strength conditioning pre-PHV, then during the growth spurt and after the growth spurt, they're going to be in a lot better position than if they don't do any form of strength conditioning before their big growth spurt. So essentially, it's really important that the child learns how to move and control their body before they grow rapidly and they lose control, so that then on the other side, they can more quickly regain that control that they used to have. The second phase is then during PHV, and this is the big growth spurt phase. During this, children often resemble Bambi on ice. They lose coordination, they look quite awkward in their movements, and they get really tight, sore muscles, and often the risk of injury is a lot higher. So during this phase, we want to really emphasize movement quality, flexibility, balance, coordination, stability. And then post-PHV is from late adolescence into becoming an adult. This is where, especially if they've already been exposed to S&C, we can really start to progressively overload their body and really start to build some real adult levels of strength. Now, you might get some players who get to this stage earlier, whether they're 13 or 14, or it might take players till they're 16, 17 to truly get out of the other side of their growth spurt. So now the next thing we want to understand is whether lifting weights during any of those 3 phases is going to impact the growth of your child then and beyond. And very simply, this is one of the biggest myths in strength conditioning, and it's just not true that lifting weights will stunt growth. There's decades of research showing that if S&C is applied right and strength training is applied right, then it's in fact optimal for children and teenagers rather than suboptimal. An important thing to note is it's not only going to increase the strength of your muscles, but it's also going to increase your bone mineral density, so your bones are going to become stronger and more resistant to injury as well. The risks with lifting weight always come from poor technique and loading too heavy too soon. So it's really important, if you can, to follow a structured S&C program that progressively overloads you over time and receive proper coaching on how to implement the right technique. The next thing to point out is that all great cricketers want to be great athletes first. And having spoken to loads and loads of parents over the years, the one key question they always have is, what is the one good exercise my son or daughter can do to help their bowling or batting? And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that it's not as simple as just one exercise. It might look like that on social media. There might be Instagram accounts that tell you this one exercise will be the one exercise you need. But it's important to understand that we're trying to build an athlete first, cricketer second. We're focused on the long-term athletic development of your child, and that means we're not just going to focus on one particular area. We're going to build the whole package so they're not compensating in any of their movement patterns, and they can be the most efficient athlete possible, which is then going to lead into them having the tools and their physical skill set to be the best cricketer and carry out the techniques they need to the best of their ability. Of course, we can be a bit specific towards a batter, bowler or keeper, but my favourite analogy for this is it's like baking a cake. Whether you've got a Victoria sponge cake, a chocolate cake or a lemon drizzle cake, in all of those cakes you're still going to have milk, flour, eggs, butter and so forth. I'm not the best baker, so I'm not sure on that. And in an athlete, whether they're a batter, bowler or keeper, they're going to need to be able to squat, lunge, hinge, push, pull, brace their core, sprint, jump, land. It's only then when you want to add the finer toppings to the cake that you then get really specific and you add in the chocolate, the strawberries, the lemon. And for a batter, this might be extra forearm or upper or arm strength. For a bowler, it might be extra work on the Achilles for back foot contact. And for a keeper, it might be extra work on lateral movement power. Next up, and tying in quite closely to the previous point, is multi-sport participation is a good thing for youth athletes and arguably adult athletes as well. It's going to allow them to apply broader athletic skills, whether that's turning, jumping, landing. It's going to improve their coordination. It's going to give them a mental break from cricket, which is good to avoid burnout. And also, a lot of injuries in cricket happen from the repeated motions we have to do, such as a fast bowling action in just our right or left hand. And by playing other sports and having to move in different ways, we're going to even out those imbalances. So don't be afraid to let your child play multiple sports. And normally the players who do play multi-sports end up to be the best athletes in the long run anyway. Next up, let's look at nutrition and recovery needs. I'll include a lot more detail in the emails series that you can access via the link below. But for now, we're just going to cover some broader topics within nutrition and recovery. If your child, as many youth cricketers are, is very, very active, normally they need a lot of food in order to refuel optimally. And these recommendations of levels are also going to vary drastically depending on how much exercise they're doing in the week. But as a general rule of thumb, you want to be thinking balance, not restriction when it comes to nutrition. Carbohydrates give us our primary fuel for match day and training, so we need to make sure we're getting in a good amount of these. Protein is crucial for our recovery and muscle growth, so it's also very important we get in a good amount of protein in our diet. And with protein, we often do recommendations based on the body weight. And with that, because children obviously weigh a little bit less than adults, it's very, very rare that a child can't get the protein they need from whole foods first before looking at supplements. Hydration is very, very important, and often youth athletes are incredibly dehydrated. So we need to make sure that before, during and after practice and matches, we're hydrating sufficiently. Like I say, there's a lot of detail we can get into here, which I'll pop in the link in the description below. But as general rules, we shouldn't probably need supplements. In some rare cases, we might need them. And eating enough is often as important for children as eating clean. And the final thing to understand when we come to nutrition and recovery is ultimately the best recovery tool any cricketer, youth or adult, can have is a good night's sleep. And in general, the sleep patterns of youth athletes are pretty poor. So it's a really important area to prioritize. So in summary, S&C isn't something that we just think about starting at a certain age, but we think about training safely and effectively for the stage of growth that your child is at. Another key area which I haven't gone into detail here about is workload and workload management, whether that's bowling or just general cricket workload. And I haven't gone into that just yet because I'm going to make a longer video on this specific subject in a few weeks' time. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get first access to that. I hope you found that helpful, and just one final reminder, hit the link in our description below where there will be a series of emails that I'll send you about all of these topics we've covered, where I'll give you much more detail and also provide the references for all of this knowledge that I've shared.